because it's their interpretation, whatever. This same kind of theme develops as our society gets further away from religion into humanism. I talked about Heidegger before, and he identifies this in his own writings as a clear, very clear problem. He says that like secular humanism, liberalism today, has essentially the same values as Christianity. If you ask them any fundamental Christian value, they would probably agree with it. When they have their criticism of Christian churches, it's never really a criticism of Christianity. It's a criticism of what the church does. And if you actually look at it on the face of it, what do they complain about? They complain about, oh, these atrocities have happened, they discriminate, they're bigoted, they spread hatred. Well, none of these are Christian virtues. None of these are Christian values. In fact, if you look at your secular humanist critique of Christianity, it tends to be, it's not, if you take it on the face of it, to bring it right down to its values, their critique is, it's not really Christian enough. The only difference, and Heidegger points this out, the major difference is that what you have is these values without a spiritual root. I mean, you can look at God, or you can look at Jesus, and you can look at the Bible and say, these are why these values make sense. Humanism doesn't have that. It doesn't have anything. I recently got into an argument with one of these secularists not too long ago about events. Some of you might have heard they recently outlawed circumcision for religious reasons in Germany, which I think, I'm very anti-circumcision. I don't think anyone should ever have it done. But to make it against the law, to make practicing your religion against the law, to make Orthodox Judaism against the law, that's not a step in the right direction. I don't think that the state has the right to do this. And I was arguing with this person, and they couldn't come up with any rational argument, really, except for the idea that anyone who disagrees is crazy. So essentially, it's like, oh, you have to be crazy to do this. All religious people are crazy. Religion is a form of insanity, blah, blah, blah. Which is interesting because you can compare this to any Southern Baptist and just replace the word crazy with sinner. Yeah. And it's like, anyone who disagrees with me is crazy, anyone who disagrees with me is sinner. You've still got the same narrow focus. You've still got the same inability to adapt or to consider other ideas. And this is the reality we're living at now. So what started with the Protestant Reformation to create a wider realm of interpretation with people who have no critical thinking skills in many cases and have no ideas of their own and trying to interpret the Bible, well, we now have taken that a step further where things are further decimated, and you have these values with no motor force behind them, and people have no way to articulate why they think something is good or why they think something is bad. They can't reference it to a spiritual point of reference. Instead, all they have is, well, if you don't think, it's common sense. It's just common sense. Well, common sense isn't a logical argument. If something's common sense, you should be able to logically argue it and come to a conclusion and back it up with ideas instead of just saying, everyone who disagrees with me is crazy. And that's kind of what we're facing right now. You can see the evolution of this idea, which brings us right back to Liber 418, where Crowley starts to talk about evil, particularly in the 10th Aether. You see Sharonzon. He identifies himself as dispersion. Well, you have a concentrated idea with Catholicism, which is a sort of ratified Christian system. That starts to disperse into Protestantism and starts to further disperse into humanism, and gets to the point where all you have is values with no idea, people have no critical way to look at them. They can't critically think about them. They can't critically engage them. They just have this sort of vague notion, well, it's just right because it's right. And Crowley was very much against this idea, and Thelema is very much against this idea. You have to be able to back up your ideas. If you look at the morality of the Book of the Law, because it does have morality, it's not amoral, but it's certainly not in line with secular humanist values or humanitarianism in general. It's actually specifically against humanitarianism. And Crowley complains about that constantly. He believes that artificially preserving people or trying to help or save people who should be just allowed to die in their misery with the outcast and the unfit is a pollution of the human race. People get hostile to this idea, and we can see that what the trigger for this change from Catholic Protestantism, Judeo-Christianity, to a sort of non-religious form of the same values. You can bring that right back to World War II and right back to the Nazis in Germany. I always say, Satan in many ways has lost his power in our society. You could walk into the mall, walk into the mall down here with a picture of Satan in a big upside-down pentagram. Maybe one or two people might give you a dirty look, but, it's pretty normal. No one's really going to do that. Walk down into the same mall with a swastika and a picture of Hitler on your shirt, you're going to get a different reaction. So who's the real devil? Who are we really afraid of? What is the real face of evil in modern society today?